What are you seeing?
The presentation, it
Very
says an
good.
Indian views
You're
of Indian
seeing
affairs.
the presentation. Very good. Okay. So last week, guys, we began this unit on persuasion. And we said that persuasion is basically a process by which we engage other people to have them adopt our way of thinking and potentially take actions that are in agreement with what we want or what we expect. And we said that we've been engaging persuasion since the day we were born, and we will be engaging persuasion until we take our last breath, right? Because that's part of human social dynamics. And persuasions can be given vocally, like in speeches, and persuasion can be done in written form in a variety of formats, like newspaper articles, editorials, essays, you name it. Today, we're going to see an example of persuasion written by Nez Perce Nation Chief Joseph. And it's titled An Indian's Views of Indians' Affairs. You know that when we hear about civil rights, we hear a lot about the plight of the African Americans. We hear about their suffering and the injustices committed against this sector of our population. Oh, as a matter of fact, I don't know if you knew it or not, but it's February, and traditionally February is Black History Month. Did you know that?
Yes.
Sí.
Black
Yes.
History, okay.
Yes.
But well, now you do. The same way that every September is Spanish Heritage Month, where they celebrate Hispanic culture and history. But February is Black History Month. I wish we had a Native American History Month because you know what? When you study history, as much as African Americans have been abused and subject to injustices, I think that all the abuses committed against them pale in comparison with what was done to the Native American. We don't hear much of the Native American, do we? They don't have like a voice. But it's important that we understand that what is today the United States was land of and was the home of several distinct Native American nations. It was their home, and it was taken away from them by force. It's important that we understand that the United States, when we look at the history of not only the United States but all of America, we use beautiful words like the exploration and conquest of America. It sounds very romantic. It sounds very, very cool, right? Very adventurous. But basically, what America suffered was an invasion by Europeans. Because you use the other terms, and it sounds like America was empty. And America had over 20 million inhabitants when the Europeans arrived with Christopher Columbus. So these people were here. You know, it's a land that is now inhabited by the white man was taken by force from the Indians. So let's move on to this lesson, and I would like to begin with a question. What usually happens when a group of people are governed by a different set of rules? Think in your household. How many of you have a brother or a sister that live with you?
Me.
Okay. Do you love them?
Yes.
Sometimes. I had a brother and a sister, and I loved them sometimes, right? When they didn't mess with me, especially my sister. She would take my stuff, and I felt like choking her. God bless her, right? But it's not easy, right? When we have to deal with family members on occasions. But I've seen brothers and sisters that they just love each other to bits. And I think that is so cool. But the most common thing I've seen is brothers and sisters, they just hate each other. They have like a competition going on. I don't know what's going on in your household. It's none of my business either. But um, take this question and put it in the context of your household. Because you guys are governed by a set of rules, right? Who makes those rules in your house?
My mom.
Oh, what about your dad? I mean, I made rules in my house, my wife and I together, mom and dad, we made the rules, okay? And we were supposed to have rules that were like, we were supposed to agree on those rules. And those rules govern the household because if you don't have rules, what you'll have is chaos. And where you have chaos, what you have is death and destruction, right? Any household that does not have rules would have people that are at each other's throats all the time, right? There's no way to live. Now, thinking in this question, how would you answer? What usually happens when a group of people are governed by a different set of rules?
Oh no.
What do you mean? Oh, that's because you're an only child. You don't have brothers and sisters that live with you. But those of you that said that you have brothers and sisters that live with you, what usually happens?
They try to change the rules. In my house, they try to change the rules.
You fight to change the rules.
Yes.
Why would you fight to change the rules? Why would you do that?
I personally don't do it, but my little brother kind of does it sometimes. I don't understand his point of view trying to change it.
Well, let me tell you what I've seen. Okay, it has not been necessarily my personal experience, but I have seen that it's been the experience of many people that I know. When you have a group of people and there are rules, but then some apply to some and some do not apply to the others, there's trouble because that is considered unfair. And you see that a lot in households, like mom and dad put rules, and sometimes the youngest one gets a free pass. Does it sound familiar?
Yes, yes, very.
And how do you feel about that, Amaya?
It's not fair.
It's like he's a baby, like like that's life. That's life, I grew up in a household where we were three. I was the oldest one. There was the middle one, and then there's the youngest one. Uh, the oldest one, that's the one they make all the mistakes with. That's the mostly abused one because children do not come to the world with a set of instructions, right? We don't come to the world with an instruction manual. So any mistake is made with us or any abusive thing, right? Then with the second one, parents know better and they're kind of like indifferent to the middle one. And then the baby, the last one, he's the one that gets a free pass for everything. Super lax application of rules. So what did that create between the brothers? Resentment. It creates anger because there's a sense of unfairness. Why with me and not with her or not with him? Does it ring a bell?
Yes.
Now, let's take that and apply this to the collective of society, to society, not only a household. What happens when we have rules that apply to some people and some that do not? Same thing, people get upset over what is perceived as discrimination or repression. For example, we're part of a country called the United States of America that has a constitution that says that all men are created equal. And then when you look at how society functions, you don't see that equality. You see that discrimination, and sometimes you even see repression. You see like, but wait a minute, what's going on here? The treatment is different. We saw that January 6th. We saw a group of people violently protesting, and being sent home by the police. We saw last summer a group of other people, mostly Black people, protesting peacefully, getting gassed and getting beat with batons and being arrested, although they were not being violent. So all of those things make people upset because it showed the inequalities that exist in our society. But as I said earlier, no people have been more discriminated and repressed than the Native Americans. And they were going to be reading and seeing a video also on the Nez Perce, how they were persecuted and how they were massacred, how they were driven from their homeland and sent to a tiny reservation. I would like to show you a video on what happened to the Nez Perce. So let me move on to the video.
Sí.
Yes.
What do you see?
The video.
Okay, so let's check this out then. Pay attention, please.
In 1871, an old Nez Perce chief summoned one of his sons to his deathbed. He told him that he would be chief of his people soon, and therefore to never give up the land on which they live. The son took his father's hand and promised him he'd protect their land with his life. The son's name was Joseph. He would later become the chief of the Wallowa Nez Perce band who lived in the Wallowa Valley in Oregon. A few decades earlier, in 1855, Joseph and his father, who was also named Joseph, attended a treaty council called by Territorial Governor Isaac Stevens at Walla Walla. Stevens convinced the region's tribes that the best way to preserve their homeland from American encroachment was to sign a reservation treaty. This treaty took away some land from the Nez Perce, but guaranteed them safety from further conquerings. The Nez Perce chiefs, including Old Joseph, agreed and signed it. However, in the 1860s, gold was discovered on the reservation. Miners poured in, and in 1863, the U.S. government offered a new treaty attempting to reduce the reservation to less than 1/4 of its previous size. Those bands, whose homes already laid within the boundaries of the new reservation, agreed, and a chief named Lawyer signed the treaty. But the other chiefs, representing about 2/3 of the tribe, protested and withdrew from the council without signing it. Old Chief Joseph was among the ones who refused. His refusal to sign the Treaty of 1863 clouded the issue of ownership, and though the government announced that Lawyer and the chiefs who had signed had spoken for the whole tribe, binding all Nez Perce to the new reservation, no immediate attempt was made to drive Old Joseph's band from the Wallowa Valley. In August 1871, Old Joseph died, and young Joseph became chief of the Wallowa Nez Perce band. Tensions rose soon after Old Joseph's death. Settlers from Oregon's Grande Ronde found a route into the Wallowa and moved in, claiming the natives' land. Young Joseph protested to the Indian agent on the Nez Perce reservation in Idaho, and an investigation by the Bureau of Indian Affairs resulted in a decision that the Wallowa still belonged legally to the natives. On June 16, 1873, President Grant formally set aside the Wallowa as a reservation for the roaming Nez Perce Indians and ordered the settlers to withdraw. In 1876, 2 settlers killed a Nez Perce man over a dispute after mistakenly accusing him of stealing their horses. The Nez Perce demanded justice. After threats from natives, American and Nez Perce representatives agreed to a trial to be held under United States law. The men were later found innocent. The next year, in 1877, a series of parleys with the government officials was held. Chief Joseph continued to insist that he would not sell the land, nor give up the land. After that, U.S. Army General Oliver Otis Howard called another treaty council in May 1877. But this time, there would be no negotiation. General Howard told Joseph and the other chiefs that their people would need to move and gave them 30 days to do it. If they refused, the army would move them by force. Joseph then led his unhappy and in many cases angry people to Camas Prairie in Idaho for one last tribal rendezvous before picking out their own parts of the reservation. He was convinced that this was the only way to keep his people safe. He also believed that he could eventually work out an agreement that would allow them to return to Wallowa and at least share the land with the white settlers. The mood at Camas Prairie was hostile. A band of Nez Perce warriors had ridden off to the white settlements to take bloody revenge for the earlier murder. Without Joseph's knowledge, they killed 18 settlers. Joseph and the other chiefs concluded that the only way to avoid all-out war was to leave their country altogether, head over Lolo Pass into Montana, and buy some time among the friendly Flathead people in the Buffalo Country. Then they departed to a hiding place farther south, in Whitebird Canyon. Meanwhile, General Howard found out about the massacre and sent 90 troopers and 4 officers under Captain David Perry and Captain Joel Trimble to round up the hostiles and force them onto the reservation. 11 civilian volunteers and 12 treaty-supporting Nez Perces accompanied the troops, and after a rapid 2 days' march of almost 80 miles, they learned of the Nez Perce camp in Whitebird Canyon and prepared to attack it early the following morning. The Nez Perce counted about 600 people, 200 warriors, with the rest being women and children. As the army approached, many of the warriors lay drunk on whiskey they had seized from the settlers before. Altogether, not more than 50 warriors, armed with bows and arrows, shotguns, old muskets, and a few modern rifles, rode out to defend the camp. The Nez Perce sent a truce team with a white flag in front, hoping they could avoid the battle. Somebody from the army shot at them. They shot back, and the battle was on. As the battle started, a group of warriors on the left flank swept from behind a hill and charged the volunteers. At the same time, the warriors on the right flank attacked the mounted troopers. The men in the center, seeing natives and confusion all around them, gave way and made a sudden rush for their horses. In a few minutes, the entire command was cut into small groups, fighting desperately for their lives. Those who could fled the battle. The army lost 34 men, a third of their command. The Nez Perce had only 2 men wounded and none killed. Equally important for the future, they retrieved 63 rifles and a large number of pistols from the battlefield. General Howard was shocked, and fearing that the uprising would spread to treaty-supporting Nez Perces, as well as other Northwest tribes, called for troop reinforcements from all over the West. Within a week, General Howard himself took the field. With a force of 227 hastily assembled troops, 20 civilians, and a large group of packers and guides, he marched hurriedly out from Lapwai, intending to punish the natives. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please consider supporting the channel.
So, that's the history of the Nez Perce, not African Americans, but yes, African Americans, but Native Americans continue being abused to this day and repressed. In Chief Joseph, the one that you saw in the video, made a speech where he was making a case for equality with the Native Americans. And as you read it, I would like for you to think in the different techniques and appeals that he makes in his persuasion, because his speech is a persuasive speech. He's trying to make the American government see eye to eye, see the situation the way that the Indians understand it's happening. The literary concept that we will be exploring today include the argument, you know, that the argument is the composition intended to convince or persuade. In other words, it's that main idea that you're trying to get across. And arguments can be either pro or con. Arguments are pro when you're arguing in favor of something, and they are con when you are arguing against something. So be attentive to what the argument is. Something else you need to be attentive to is to the tone, which is the author's attitude toward the subject implied in the literary work. In this case, a speech. The reading strategy that you're going to be using today is summarizing. And summarizing is something you've been doing since elementary school. And summarizing is to give a brief statement of the main points of a text instead of expressing the entire content. You like strip it down to what essentially is being said. And you're going to be summarizing because this teaches you how to discern the most important ideas in a text. Sometimes we hear a lot of words, and maybe in that lot of words, maybe a lot of important things are being said, maybe a few important things are being said, or maybe nothing important is being said. So we have to be very discerning to what these important ideas might be. And sometimes we have to learn also how to ignore irrelevant information. The speech can be found on page 530 to 532. There is a wrap-up activity that needs to be completed in its entirety in page 533, and then eventually uploaded to the LMS. Do we have any question, guys?
No.
No questions, okay. I want to remind you that this collection is very short. We introduced it last week. It's titled Persuasion. And in the next few days, we're going to be reading selections that are trying to persuade you about something. In this case, we have a speech. In our next lesson, we're going to be engaging an interview. And in our final lesson, we're going to be engaging 2 essays, where they are also trying to persuade you about something.